Welcome on behalf of the K-12 Online Conference. This year's conference has taken a new form. We're delighted to be hosting the first of a series of panel discussions based on the keynote presentation, or should I say presentations, for the conference. Julie Lindsay created the three-part pre-conference keynote, Global Narratives, Collaboration on the Edge, which we will be discussing today. Feel free to put comments and questions in the chat. I'm Susan Van Gelder, part of the organizing committee, and I'm joining you from Montreal in Quebec, Canada. On our panel, we have Julie Lindsay in Ocean Shores, New South Wales, Australia, Amy Jamber and her former student Lauren Bayer from Wisconsin. We have Lee Zeitz from Iowa in the US, Sonia now I've forgotten how to pronounce your name, from Auckland, New Zealand. Thank you. We have Anne Merchant coming in any minute now from Hawkesdale in the province of Victoria in Western Australia. We have Sherry Williams from Ohio and Lucy Gray from Illinois. So I will turn things over to Julie to start, and feel free, everybody, to chime in when you have comments, questions. We'd like to keep this as informal as possible.
Thank you, Susan. That's great. And it's wonderful to be here with such an illustrious group of people, an illustrious group of global educators and global collaborators. And I'm very honoured, actually, to have this opportunity and for us to talk. And of course, it's not going to be just me talking. We're going to have lots of opportunities for everyone to have a chance to say what they would like to share. And I must say, I did have great pleasure putting that trilogy together. Of course, typical me, you put up your hand to do things, and I just love working with the K-12 online people. Thank you so much, Susan and Karen and Wes and everyone. But, you know, I sat there last week thinking, it's not going to be just one video. I think this has to be three. Of course, you know, my husband's going, you've done it again. You put your hand up, you do. But, you know, there's so much to say, isn't there? There's really so much to share and so much to say. But what we want to talk about now really is, how is this working for us? And we're in different places in the world. We're at different levels of our careers. And we actually have, we've got one student with us at the moment. We're hoping to have another one. And we're pushing global education, global collaboration in different ways. And I think one of the important questions that I asked during the keynote was, you know, what is online global collaboration? And how do you talk about that in your own learning environment? And is it a pedagogy? Is it a curriculum? You know, there's questions around this. So who'd like to chip in first? Actually, I'm going to go to Lee first. Lee, can you give us some thoughts? Because you're at the higher education level. What are you doing in terms of explaining online global collaboration?
Thank you, Julie. Yes, I'm a professor of instructional technology at the University of Northern Iowa. And global collaboration is something I try to do in a number of my classes. I must admit that it isn't done a whole lot at the university level. And I think that's really unfortunate, because we are a global society. I mean, some people speak of isolationism, and I don't like that idea. But the idea is we are a global society, and we have to be building global citizens who get the opportunity to connect with one another. Interesting thing that if I can share a little story, I just last night, or no, I'm sorry, Tuesday night, I had a project where I was going to be working with another person in another state. And this person was going to be, we were going to do something that was going to be an intercultural project where we were going to compare how they do things at that state compared to what happens here in Iowa. And this person had like 40 students he was going to deliver for us, and we were all going to do a Zoom project and all that. And we were real excited, and unfortunately one of his students showed up. I had about 18 other students, and so I said, well, we'll just have to do something else. Well, I just received an email from one of my students today saying, you know what? Why don't we just go contact all those Connecticut students, and we'll make it run even though you don't have to, Dr. Z. So in other words, my students took over the whole process, and what they want to do is they want to make that connection. That's the attitude that we want to see in our students.
Absolutely.
And our future teachers.
And we're seeing this in K-12 as well and there's a lot to be said about higher ed if we've got time today. But that bypassing the reluctant teacher, bypassing that wall, or jumping over that wall. If the teacher or the school's not going to make it happen yourself. So I'm going to move to Amy. What are your thoughts? You're over there in Wisconsin, USA. What's happening over there?
Yes, it's global collaboration is really exciting, having participated in it now for several years. And when I started doing it years ago, it was, I'll be very honest, a little overwhelming, challenging. There was a lot to experience and learn. And I think the consistency and the commitment to global collaboration is incredibly important. And I think the energy that comes out of that between teachers and students is incredible. I also feel that it just offers incredible relevancy. As I I have taught several different courses in my career with students primarily between the ages of 15 and 18. And this is one piece of their work in school, that they are not just learning about something off in the distance or something that's somewhat theoretical, but they are participating in it. So it's so incredibly authentic. And I will say this, and it just happened again, I've had students who have been involved in global collaboration come to me afterwards and talk about how they don't feel as connected in school as when they were working globally with other students and teachers. I just had a student last week reach out to me, a student I had a couple years ago, asking me for a letter of recommendation, actually, and said, I certainly do hope that you are still working globally with your students. That was one of the best experiences I ever had. So I know that not only do they enjoy it while they're in the experience, but they see how incredibly important it was after. And even students who leave me in my classroom will talk about how that experience, they brought that in other conversations at the college level in applying for work experience. And maybe Lauren can even speak to this. Lauren has just left high school and is now at the university and can speak to what that experience is for her, having been in the high school and now college classroom.
Thanks, Amy. And let's move to Lauren. Now, Lauren, your experience in the Flat Connections Global Project was featured in part 2 of the Keynote trilogy. And I did a bit of a top and tail on your wonderful award-winning video. Actually, you got the first place in the video awards last semester. But I'm just wondering, share your experience. Did you understand what online global collaboration was before you went into the project? And how do you feel now? Over to you.
Sure, thank you, Julie. Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren. I am currently studying at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So I had worked on a couple different teams before I worked on the Flat Connections project, but I will say that global collaboration is a completely different animal. I thought I had a pretty decent understanding of what global collaboration was. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but then at the same time, there are a lot of things that you don't really take into account, and just like little things like syncing up your team. And I had the opportunity to be a student leader for the team that I was working with for the project, and I think that really did expose me to a number of other challenges, like coordinating my team. Schools were on different breaks at different times. We had different time zones completely, and just these little challenges that really kind of pushed us to work in more innovative ways, I thought, to accommodate to everybody from all over. And then, there's the cultural side of it. It's we're all coming from different backgrounds, so I appreciated that exposure in that sense, and then that challenge. And I have used that experience a number of times. I've applied for a number of positions since I've come to school at UW-Madison, and I've been able to draw on my time with Flat Connections a number of times, just talking about the challenges that I faced, but then also what I learned working with these teams. And it was valuable at the time, and it's continued to be really valuable. And like Amy said, it was a really valuable experience that I do. I'm very glad that I was able to participate.
So Lauren, in your experience, when you've graduated now, you're in university, so how do we get the message across to other teachers that this is important? How do we explain online global collaboration to others in all levels of education?
Sure. I think the soft skills that you gain from working globally, they're so valuable. I mean, I did learn a lot with the research project that I did. I was working on the project based off of the Horizon Report, and I learned plenty through the research, but I would not say that that was the biggest takeaway for me. I would say that it's that teamwork, and that's something that you take into any job. And I think the point of education, especially at the earlier stages, is to prepare students for college and then for the career. And yes, I remember the stuff that I learned from textbooks when I was in middle school and high school, but so much more than that is like the experience that I gained from working on a team. And I think that that's the focus that should be the focus for educators, is really preparing students to work on other teams, because that's where the education comes in. And I think if you're trying to convince teachers that this is valuable for students to participate in kind of unconventional programs like this, that's what you play off of, the skills that you don't find in a textbook or you don't get through working on a worksheet in the classroom.
Yes, so it's those collaborative skills, isn't it? And teamwork, group work. And so the focus, I'm just trying to think whether we need to rename this. I'm sort of thinking out of the box here, because online global collaboration still isn't getting enough traction, in my view, of course. And of course, these sessions help us to get the word out. But so I'm going to move to Amy. Now, Amy, your students, I grabbed that video that your students produced a couple of years ago and put that into part 2 of the trilogy. Now, they talk about similar things to what Lauren's just shared with us. So what's your take on this? What are you doing to explain online global collaboration?
You mean to my colleagues, or you just to the students where I teach, or?
Sorry, Amy, I meant Sherry.
Oh, good. Sounds good.
I meant throw to Sherry.
So I'll ask the same question. Do you mean colleagues, students, both?
Anyone. Do you walk down the corridor saying, hey, I'm doing online global collaboration, I'm just about to go to my class? How do you start a class when you enter a global project? How do you first introduce it? So what are your tactics? And how did you inspire those students? And I know, Amy, you were at the same school at one stage, that's why I know you could jump in and answer this as well, but we'll give Sherry a go. How did you inspire those students to actually, I know they came to you and said, we want to create this video to share our experiences during the project. So how did you do that?
Yeah, in the very beginning, we described what we kind of envisioned it to be, and then we let them start talking to us about some things that they were experiencing, some things that they wanted to experience possibly, and we just start really sharing with them, almost sometimes dreaming with them possibilities, and then they just took off with it, which was great. That's the students. At the staff that do the same thing with our school, they all know that we're doing global collaboration, but that's because I share a lot about different experiences students have had, or describe different things happening. And they, it's interesting. They think it's interesting. They think it's really good. They think it's very valuable, but a lot of them have been very reluctant to come in and join. Amy was one of the good ones that I got to work with. We started the journey together. It's been just a great thing to be able to walk through that and experience that collaboration. And Amy, I don't know if you want to share some things about that class too.
Well, I think what was exciting for the students too was their ability to feel like they had voice and choice, right? That they, when you really tapped into what does this mean to you, where do you see yourself applying this, 5-10 years down the road, and what did this experience really mean for you? They were excited to share that. It gave an opportunity for them to reflect on the experience, and then to really recognize the fact that it was really them driving the whole experience of global collaboration. I mean, there were structures in place and there were guidelines, but at the end of the day, it was them.
Yeah. So we did have a guideline or a structure started, but we did give them the freedom to kind of take that in a few different directions as their interests, or maybe the discussions their teams had. Those teams and the student leaders, we tried to give them that freedom that they could take it in the direction that they wanted to as a team. So that was really important.
Interesting. Lee, I think I'm going to throw to you because I know you had a bit of a comment or a question there based on.
Well, I had a question.
What
I
Sherry's been
had
saying.
a question for Sherry, and that was, does this mean that, I mean, the way you talked about how you had the students kind of help generate the idea, is this because you simply had them generate the idea and then you went out and tried to create something like that? Or did you have a pretty good idea in your head and you were trying to get them to steer them so that they would come up with an idea that would fit into what you already planned out?
We had a base, and then, no, I didn't really have a preconceived idea. If they wanted to go somewhere, we tried to let them go there. But we did have a base to start from, a place to start, a starting point.
Can you give an example of that? I mean, it sounds like what you did is they came up with this idea, I'd like to talk to somebody in Belgium, and then you went out and you tried to find somebody in Belgium?
No, this was actually within the Flat Connections project.
Mm-hmm.
So we let them investigate, for example, different topics. We were, at the time when we started, we were using different topics, but like investigate the topics. And then from there, they developed their knowledge, or they had to create a project together. We let them decide what that would look like. Mm-hmm. Actually, quite a few teams at one point wanted to do different projects, and we let them have that choice. So it was more of that type of thing. The connections.
So you gave them ownership in the way in which they were going to accomplish what they were planning to do overall.
That's right. Yeah, the
Terrific.
Connections in the classrooms and the teachers were already connected.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have that base. So what Terrific. They did with that was their choice.
So, you know, it's making those connections is so important first, and then it's moving into that, well, what are we going to do with this connection? And I know, Lee, that's what you work on as well at the higher ed level, and the others in K-12 education work on that. And then it's really, I mean, I talk a lot about design, you know, designing that learning outcome and designing it so that it is meaningful. I want to throw to Sonia over in New Zealand, who's in a, it's a bit like, I tell you, it's a bit like Hawaii, isn't it? Because you're right on that edge of the time zone over there. So it's quite unique in terms of being how you interact with the world, because it gives you a whole different perspective, I think. But Sonia's working at the primary school level. Sonia, what are you doing in your school in Auckland?
Kia ora, Julie, and hi everyone, and welcome for the opportunity. I'm at Newmarket. We are, this year we've joined, our junior school have joined a Flat Connection project with Julie, and we've got children working with students in America and in Australia. And again, that time zone is interesting because we're struggling to get the 3 classes in the same time zone. We don't have a window where they can all come in at the same time. However, our teachers, with the change in daylight saving, we can do. But at our school recently, we've made connections with China using WeChat as a tool, because we know that some of the tools that we generally use in our school won't work over there, but WeChat does. And so we connected with our sister school in Ningbo, and we've connected with a kindergarten school, a local kindergarten school, using WeChat, and that was incredibly successful. So with us, our projects are about, as Julie said, just making connections first, but about really pushing that next level of collaboration and co-creating of something.
Yeah, and experimenting with tools is so important, isn't it? And this is where the whole, you know, if you do want to collaborate with China, you can't use Google. You know, you've got to find a way. And that's so important for anywhere, really. You've got to find that set of tools that each partner or participant in the collaboration can work with. But Sonia, you're also very involved in building bilingual, multilingual education, global competency, aren't you? So you have a lot of things happening in your school, particularly because New Zealand is also very multicultural.
Yes, I was just explaining to the team before about even us at Newmarket School, our interesting mix of where our students come from. And often I think with global collaboration, our school is already in a global way because our children are so multicultural. and have speak so many languages. So it's great for our teachers to develop a greater understanding of that, and to develop a greater understanding about where our children come from, develop empathy for how they learn and a bit about their background. That's what global collaboration does for us.
Yes. So it strengthens that, as you say, that understanding of who you are, where you've come from, and then similarities and differences with others. That's great. There's a couple of questions, I believe, from our audience. One is, are more female teachers involved in leading global collaboration projects in classrooms than male teachers? Well, that's a really interesting question, and I know my doctorate research that I'm halfway through at the moment, I've basically collected my data into that sort of data presentation and analysis mode. Everyone I've interviewed has been a female teacher, and a lot of them are in their latter part of their career, second half of their career, perhaps a little older. But so that's and this is just one tiny piece of research, so we need a lot more on that. But I'm going to throw to Lucy. I know who's there, who's with the Global Education Conference. And Lucy sees a lot of global educators and a lot of things happening there through the conference and through all the activities that the Global Education Conference do. So Lucy, what's your take on this? What would you like to contribute to this at the moment? Are you with us, Lucy? Maybe she's not with us.
Well, she was moving back and forth, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you're trying to talk, Lucy, we can't hear you. So try and unmute again, perhaps. But it would be good to do some more extensive research, actually, in terms of, people say to me, "Oh, it's the young teachers who must be picking this up." But it's not. It's not actually the young teachers who are picking this up. It's the older, more established teachers in their 50s and 60s who've been in the classroom for 25 to 35 years, or at least 20 years, who are really picking this up, because I believe they have a deeper understanding of the pedagogy. Would anyone like to jump in and say anything to that?
Can I say something?
Yeah.
You know what I really think it is? I think it has to do with empathy for students and your desire for what we're doing. I'm 63. I'm going to be around at this a little bit longer, longer. But the idea is that, it isn't about how old I am. It isn't about, what it is, it's about my philosophy. I'm here for the students. And the way in which they're going to succeed in life is if I connect them with the world. If I make it so that we're doing things where they are, they're student related, we empower the students, and it isn't a matter of looking at stupid standards and tests. And if you think about it, the things that we can do and the things that the students learn, like those students who just said, we want to take this over so it'll work. What greater compliment and excitement can a teacher get when the students want to take over your job? And so I really think that when we take a look at this, teachers have problems collaborating just door to door. But the idea is if we can get it so we can connect, and if we can provide learning situations where the students are achieving and they're taking control of their lives and the things they learn, that's what it's all about. I'll climb off the soapbox now.
Off your soapbox now. Well, there's another question that came through related to this, of course. Are there personality factors that play into being successful global educators? And, we could start to build a case perhaps that women have more empathy as a rule, with a generalization here in terms of building communities, collaboration, etc. And as a general rule, perhaps male teachers have more empathy with coding or the other bits and pieces that are out there. They're in education at the moment. So just before anyone jumps into that, a message from Lucy. She's having trouble connecting. She's lost audio, so we may not have Lucy contribute. She's trying to connect. Would anyone else like to contribute to that thought? That perhaps the personality is it a more female type personality? Go ahead.
Well, I think there really needs to be, the first thing that comes to my mind is flexibility. And, that can vary. And I think about that new teacher and the expectation that oh, this is something that's kind of taking off and it's new, so it must be newer teachers. And I do kind of believe that teachers who have been teaching for a while and are feeling comfortable and confident in their profession are really ready, able to, and anxious to tackle something that they know has such great importance. And perhaps our younger teachers are a little bit overwhelmed by all of the things that they're learning, and a lot of conversation around standards and learning targets and expectations in that regard. I do sometimes, unfortunately, perhaps think that global collaboration or global project are seen as, well, that's one more thing I can't take on. But in fact, I think you can naturally embed that in the things that we teach. And I have multiple certifications in the States, teaching reading, writing, and the social sciences as well. And there isn't a class that I teach that global collaboration does not fit in beautifully with the curriculum, in addition to addressing, and I would challenge, multiple standards as far as teacher expectation.
Yes, absolutely. And it's really getting to that conversation about the mindset, isn't it? So, we can talk about gender-based, we can talk about age, we can talk about those things, but it's really that mindset to be able to jump in and see a global opportunity pretty much in every educational setting. Sonia, what do you think?
I think that when the teachers come together, because I think of my own journey when I was started the global collaboration. I focused on the product, but as I've developed with my own learning, I realized it is about developing empathy and developing relationships with others, and that is really the key for what is happening when we make connections, and also for our children to do the same. I think that that as our children and our teachers work together across the time zones, across the ocean, they learn about each other, and they develop an empathy and a clear understanding about humans, human relationships.
Anyone else? Okay, so just swinging back around to, we've talked a little bit about global projects, and of course this is this question now, is it a pedagogy, is it a curriculum? So, and if you blend those two ideas, then it becomes an infrastructure basically, so that your class is run as a global classroom, your school is run as a global school. It's not just about the project, it's about the opportunity to connect and the student-centered learning and all of those things. Lucy can hear again now. She just is telling me. Lucy, would you like to jump in at this point? Are you with us? No. I think she can hear, but she can't jump in. Okay.
I'm here. Sorry. I had to unmute. So here's one thing that occurred to me that might be relevant to the conversation is
I think we just lost you again.
So we're preparing the 7th education. I'm accepting. I'm going to no proposals that day. Oh no! This is me.
I can see you.
No.
We're getting your audio a bit choppy, so it might actually be better if you don't put your video on.
Okay, I've got my audio right here. Can you hear me?
That's better, Lucy. Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
So we're preparing for the conference right now, and we're getting proposals. A lot are really on target in terms of promoting the idea of developing global competence in teachers and students. But there are a lot of people who also don't either read the instructions or fully understand what it means to be globally competent in this world. And I continually have to go back to people and say, I really need you to tie your proposal to our mission. And with some people, it's been a struggle to help them understand what it means. So I think one of the problems that's facing us is that people don't understand what global competence is. There's no general common, at least here in the United States, acknowledged, recognized definition that people are using, and they should be. I mean, there are definitions out there that they could be using. For instance, the Asia Society's work. But don't understand this, it makes things a little difficult for people to value, I think. So I just want to point that out, that there's a lot of work to be done around developing a common understanding of what this is all about.
Yes, so the building that infrastructure, building that, people are doing a lot of talking about building global programs in schools, and that's looking at all different things to different schools. I don't know, I'm going to throw back to Lauren on that one. Lauren, what's your understanding of global competence, and did you speak about this when you were going through high school? What influenced you? Or
I would say in high school we did not have a ton of conversations about global competence, but I think Sonia made an excellent point earlier. For students to be interacting with people from all over the world. I mean, it's like having a pen pal. Like when I was in first grade, I had a pen pal, and we wrote a couple letters back and forth, and then it kind of died down. But how valuable to be able to offer this to young students and say, here's somebody from across the world, and you can interact with this person, and you can work with this person, because when you grow up, that's exactly what you're going to do. Like that's where business is going. That's where just the world in general, everything is becoming more global, and it's so important to have that competence. Since coming to school here, I mean, my university is a very diverse university, but there are also a lot of people here from small towns who have never even had conversations about diversity. And I think that while global collaboration and diversity are kind of two separate topics, they do tie into one another, because you're working with people that are not like you. And I think that's something that, to see global collaboration grow, it would be really awesome to focus on growing that diversity within teams, because I recently did a case competition about how diversity within teams increases productivity, and it's just all around better for businesses. But in order to work with these teams, you have to have an understanding of how to do that. And to start that at such a young age, I think that's so valuable. And then it's not something that's learned, or when you enter into the workforce, it's all of a sudden you're working with people completely different. If you start as a young student, that's something you've been doing your entire life. And I think just to really ingrain that in students from the get-go is very important. So I would say, to answer your question, Julie, my conversations regarding that kind of collaboration have grown a lot since I've gotten to school here, but I think high schools and earlier schools have work to do when it comes to talking about topics like that collaboration and diversity.
That's excellent, Lauren. I'm just wondering, I'm going to throw to Sonia again, because she's just put something in the chat here about her global competence raising when she was 12, having a pen pal in Canada. And also, Sonia, tell us what you're doing, more about what you're doing in your school in terms of raising global competence. And do you have a definition for it in your school? Over to you.
Julie, exciting for me is this year I've managed to convince my principal to take part and learn more about it. And we have identified it, global collaboration and global education, as part of our structure for next year. So these are exciting times. It's something I've been going on about. But I know that you have to work both from the ground level and top down to see it really embedded across the school. So that's exciting for me. Across our clusters in Auckland is that we're working across schools, which is also is something new that our ministry is trying to push. And a lot of our schools are not even contemplating working across schools. A lot do, but a lot are still learning about it. So for me, these are exciting times that it's, I'm not such a lone voice anymore, pushing about working across schools and working across countries. So I'm excited.
Message from Anne. She's going to be joining us in about 5 minutes or so. Sherry, I'm going to pass to you again. You're in the Berea district, and I know Berea district you've had many conversations about building global awareness. Tell us a bit more about what you're doing, and is this global competence, is it becoming a priority, and how is your district starting to manage that?
So we started, we redid our curriculum, and we included the ISTE standards, and those had the global collaboration and global competencies embedded in them. And so I remember when I first started, it was a big stretch for me to even put that into my classes. And so we have been working on that about 5 years now. And the teachers, the computer teachers, have come a long way. And in the process, then we've helped the students, and our curriculum director is actually really supporting that and being a part of that. And then in the curriculum department, also our tech coach. So she's really, what they've started doing is taking that just from the high school curriculum and really spreading that across all ages, and pulling in other teachers and other ages of students, trying to embed that thought and that cultural sensitivity, and really helping the teachers see they need to be connecting outside of their classrooms, that how important that is, and those skills, that the students be involved in that. So we're in the process. It's always a work in progress, but I feel like we've come a long way in the last 5 years, and we continue to work on that.
Great. And Amy, I'm going to throw to you again. There's a question in the chat here. How do you help teachers and students understand that it's much bigger than just learning about cultures? So how do you prepare for that? How much do you teach up front? What do you teach up front? And we could sort of connect that with technology as well, I suppose. So,
well, absolutely. I think a huge piece of it is, skills with 21st century technologies, but we also have a lot of conversation around just the ability to communicate and work in a team. So when we go out and we talk to business leaders in the community, we say, what are the skills that you're really looking for? What are some of the most important things that you want to see out of students who are going through their education and graduating? And they said, I need them to be able to work in a team. I need them to be able to work with others. I need them to be able to problem solve. How do we tackle conflict? How do we resolve those things? How do we do it together? How do we have this idea of mutual respect and understanding? How do I say things in a non-threatening way? How do we build consensus? These are critical skills that students need to have. And then you add to that the fact that they are now, it's just not about and I work in a relatively small community, that their world is now so much bigger with the modern technologies. Their exposure and access to other people and places is so much bigger and better than it's ever been before. So really developing those very critical skills that are definitely expectations for them as they go on in their education and professional careers. And then how do they handle that in a very global environment?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Is someone going to jump in there? Lee, I'm going to throw to you in terms of taking risks. Students taking risks, and your students are learning how to become teachers, or they may already be teachers, upskilling a bit. So how do they face this? What sort of risks are they taking?
Oh, I think the risks are that they're going out, they're connecting with other people, they're working with people who are of different cultures. Actually, moving away from the teaching, I'd like to share a project that we've been working on called the Global Forest Link. And it comes from the Global School Net. And by the way, anybody who's out there, including those people who are on the board right here, this is something where you might want to get connected with it, because what it is the students actually go out and they take a look at the forests that are in the nearby area, and they take photographs of them. They learn about the history of them. They find out about why they're having deforestation. But the real important thing is they then take all of those materials and they upload them online. And this last project that we had students that were in China, I'm sorry, in Russia. We had some in Moscow. We had some by Siberia. We had some in San Diego. We had here in Iowa. And the thing was that they were actually having sessions where it was a face-to-face session where they were translating from English to Russian and vice versa, and then the kids actually got to ask questions like, who's your favorite band, musical band, and then the thing was it was bringing about a connection between people in different cultures and realizing that they're just like me. And this is going to be, they're actually working on a project, let's see, we're in November, so I think they've already started it, but they're doing it like every quarter. And if you go to globalschoolnet.org, and they have the project coming up, they're going to have connections with China, Russia, I think it's Honduras, and Brazil, and San Diego, and Iowa again. So there's a whole variety of things there, and it's really active.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So one of the problems I think that we have across our different countries represented here today is perhaps the inability of the education system in itself to support what we're doing. And one of those challenges we have, of course, is finding the tools that are unblocked to allow us to connect, finding that support to build it into our curriculum, etc. And there's just a question in the chat here about could we say something generally comparing Australia or perhaps New Zealand, Sonia, with the USA or North America. I know Anne's going to jump in any minute now, hopefully, before we finish. I know that it seems to rely on people who are what I call teacherpreneurs or outliers who tend to go out there and make sure these things happen. It's still not becoming very much widely known as a district initiative or a university department initiative or school initiative. So the Australian Education Department, for example, well, there isn't one. We're all different states. But there is now a national curriculum which focuses on intercultural understanding, but it still tends to segment ICT skills and digital learning and doesn't seem to look at that interdisciplinary, integrated approach as much as they should. But I would really love Anne to give us her thoughts about that as soon as she gets herself settled there. I can see she's almost ready there. But in terms of the value put on global collaboration, we as far as I can see it, it's still sort of a little bit left of centre and not valued as much as it could be or should be, and for the reasons that we're hearing today. When you listen to Lauren saying how valuable it was to her, when you hear teachers talking about how valuable it was, they've seen their students and how they grow as learners. Anne, are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you now.
Hi, Anne.
Hi, Julie. Hi, everyone.
Good to see you. Anne, we're asking you to start with some comments about what priority is the Australian government or the Victorian government, I know you're in Victoria, what's happening in terms of the education system in Australia? From your point of view, you're in the state system. Are they putting in any priority on developing global competence and global collaboration?
Well, it's very interesting, Julie. It wasn't obvious or transparent, but sometime this year they actually published a document encouraging the global collaboration. We've actually got an emphasis on cultural understanding. So there are some teachers being skilled and working units of work out for cultural understanding and digital citizenship. And our Australian curriculum has a focus on engagement with Asia. And because that's in our immediate time zone, we're to look at teaching our subjects with that emphasis. So the real-time global collaboration will work really well with them.
So, Anne, tell us what you're doing in your school. What are your priorities?
My priorities are, personally, to actually connect my students globally. We're a geographically and culturally isolated school. We have very few cultures represented. So I want my students to know what the world is like. The problems of the world are becoming global. They socialise globally now. So I want them to be skilled in the appropriate way of connecting and collaborating. and to learn a little bit about the world from the people who actually live there.
And what challenges have you had in the last 5 to 10 years? What battles have you had to fight to do this?
I have not had to fight with my leadership at all because they've been very, very supportive of it. But it's been time zone challenges. It's been, because we're in Asian time zone, they don't speak English as a first language. So if we want to do things in real time, we have to cope with accents, cultural misunderstandings. If we connect with the Middle East, we need to make sure that we don't show our bare arms, etc. So I think time zone challenges are always our biggest ones, because I think Australia and maybe New Zealand is one of the hardest countries in the world to find common times.
And what are you doing at the moment? Because you work right across the school, don't you? You support global connections right across the school. What's happening right now in your school?
Well, our students, wherever we can, we try to use web conferencing to bring in global experts to us. So I have a gaming elective. So yesterday we had the games designer for Call of Duty actually speak to us from Los Angeles, and he talked to the students about what his typical day looks like, encouraged them on certain subjects, etc. He was actually from India, so his accent was very pronounced. So the students had to cope with that and try and work out and understand what he was saying. But, you know, for us to get an expert speaker into our school at no cost and with no effort is rather amazing. The students are trying to connect as much as possible with a teacher in in Taiwan, because it's so hard to get the Chinese teachers through the firewall. But she's helping them with their Mandarin Chinese, their speaking of it. Our Mandarin Chinese teacher is new to our school, so she is actually doing extra study with a teacher from China. So they use web conferencing facilities to do that. We're not actually working on a global project at the moment, but we got involved in the International Dot Day project, where the students drew the dot, but they tried to show what Australia looks like in the dot. Oh, my Year 9-10 girls are actually working with a grade 5-6 class in America, and they're trying to work out where each of them live. So the first set of clues had to be using video, because we can't do it in real time, and they had to set up a video with about 6 questions that gave varying degrees of difficulty as to where we live. The American students did it too. And now we've given them the same sort of feedback, created a video exactly where we live, like within Australia. So is that a bit of a snapshot?
It is, and you're always so active. You're always amazed me how many different things you've got going on there. We've had a bit of a conversation today about teamwork, and we've got one student with us from Wisconsin, Lauren, who was the award winner for the Flat Connections project last semester, and you might remember Lauren's video on BYOD. And so Lauren talked a lot about teamwork. Now, Lauren and students were in that project, so you might remember some of her students from Australia.
And I think Vesna, she's just logging on now, so Vesna was actually part of that project too. Just give her a minute to log in.
Right. So the importance of teamwork, building those teamwork skills, and supporting students as they do that. Lauren, what did you think about what were your thoughts about the time zone between where you are and Australia and connecting with students in that project?
I think it did kind of pose a challenge. And I saw a question on the sidebar related to any challenges that we kind of expected to face going into the project and anything that we were, I guess, a little bit nervous about. And I think working with any team, at least for me, I'm always nervous, like, is my team going to follow through? Are they going to actually do what I need of them? And that's always it's not a source of anxiety for me, but it is something that I'm always a little bit nervous for, and especially in working with a team when I don't know anyone. And so I think being in this team where I wasn't even meeting with these people face to face, that was definitely, it was a challenge, and it was kind of nerve-wracking because I like in past teams that I've led, I've been able to meet with people, and I've been able to get a really physical sense of where we're at on a project. But this is just completely different in that I think there's a lot more trust in global collaboration, and everybody that was on the project was obviously perfectly capable. But I think it's a nice exercise in trust and kind of realizing that everybody will pull their own weight. But with the time zone differences, I believe, I correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was one of the schools in Australia that was actually on a break during the time that we were doing the project. Yeah, and was that your school, Anne?
Yes, it would have been.
Okay.
And it's always at the crucial time when the video requests are coming through.
Yeah, so it was kind of a challenge, and I know within our classroom we had conversations about like, how do we reach deadlines and how do we work around this, and so everything obviously worked out fine. But I think that, again, we keep talking about that teamwork, and that's in any situation that you're ever going to be in. Things happen, and so it was a nice challenge, and it was definitely interesting to accommodate different schedules and different breaks. And
thanks, Lauren. So I'm going to throw to our second student who's just joined us, and we're running short of time. But Vesna, welcome. We're delighted you're here, and we know that you were in a global project, the same one as Lauren actually last semester. So tell us a little bit about your experience in that project.
I found it quite a lot of fun to be able to communicate with people on the other side of the world, and how everyone can join in on one particular thing. But was quite challenging with my class in particular, as a lot of people were, some were behind on different projects and some were ahead. So it was a bit difficult, but overall it was really fun, and I would definitely do it again.
So were there any new technologies that you used in the project?
I'd never really done much with filmmaking and adding things together and editing videos, so that was a new thing for me, and I found it quite interesting, and it's actually made me want to pursue a career in film.
Oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting. So what was your favourite part of the connection and the collaboration, and would you recommend that other schools jump in and make sure they do things like this?
Yeah, totally. It's such a great opportunity, and it's something that you'd be able to, in a few years' time, be able to say, yeah, I've connected with kids all over the world. It was amazing. And, sorry.
So how are we going to encourage people? Like, if you were just imagine you're talking to 1 million students out there. What would you say to them if their teachers are saying, look, no, you can't do this, we're not doing this in our school? What would you say to them to try and encourage them to do it?
I don't really know. Just more or less it's an amazing opportunity. And that it can create so many things. Like, it builds teamwork within the students, and just you might have contacts with someone around the world. So if I end up going to America, if I keep in contact with someone that I previously talked with on the project, I have someone to meet over there.
So what else have you done in your school? Apart from, we were talking just about one project, but you've probably been involved in some of the other things in your school, have you, that connect you with other people around the world?
I've been lucky enough to be in a lot of Miss Merch's classes, and she's always been able to connect me with someone. And most recently was someone who speaks fluent Mandarin, which is the language we learn here. And as I've been doing that for about 10 years, I was able to speak and improve my Chinese.
That's excellent. Does anyone else on the panel connect their students for language or for any other purpose that isn't so much project-based, but is really meeting a need within the school through a global capacity? Sonia, are you doing any external sort of language work at this point, or thinking about it?
Yes, we are. We've started. We're going to be doing a bit more of that next year. I hope so, because our school year's coming to an end. And I was interested in hearing about Wilderness. It is Wilderness School, isn't it? Anne, is that your school? Mm-hmm. No, I was trying to see the logo on Vesna's uniform. But yeah, our school is a lot of our children speak Chinese, and with Australia and New Zealand so close together, we might do better with the time zone with our children to practice their formulaic expressions with each other, or for our kids to teach your children. Also, we're working with our secondary school who are also Mandarin. They have Mandarin as a language because that's one of our government initiatives, is for more Asian languages in schools, and that's something I'm involved in. So I can see much more across school work and across country work with languages, particularly if we're all in the same time zone.
And there you go. You've just made a connection, because I know you two haven't really worked together yet. But so Anne's in Victoria, Hawkesdale P12 College. You're only 2 hours apart. There you go. Great things will happen. We'll catch up with you when you make great things happen. I know Susan wants to jump in there, I think. Susan, you trying to jump in?
Yes, I will jump in. This has been an amazing discussion. I have to say I've been part of telecollaborative projects since the late 1980s. It's wonderful to see what's happening now. I want to thank all of you for being part of this and for just encouraging your students to look beyond the walls of your classroom and into the world as a whole. I think it's so important to break down those barriers. I will suggest that the conversation can continue through our Voxer channel at bit.ly / K12 online CONF, like our hashtag, /Voxer, and chime in there. Also, your tweets will be sent into our slow chat, which you can also see at bit.ly.com/K12 online chat. We really need to continue the conversation. It's so important what you're all discussing. So keep watching K12onlineconference.org for information about our upcoming mini conferences. The next one will take place the week of November 14th with the theme of learning spaces. And I certainly see the world as a learning space. I hope it's not just about the actual classroom, but beyond the classroom. The keynote speaker will be David Jakes. A panel discussion will take place on November 17th. And of course, you'll be getting more information. So thanks for joining us. Good evening or good day to all of you. And from the free conference, you can always keep coming back to this chat. This conversation will be archived and can be accessed later. So thanks all.
Thanks, Susan. Thank you, K12 Online. Thanks, everybody.
Great.
It's been great to
Thank
be
you.
here.
Thanks, everyone.